main thing is the fact that there's a dark trinity, right? And we have the trinity that we follow, and then there's the dark trinity. And I don't think most people know that.
It's actually a really good way to start it. I was reading this article last night on a website called, I still have it opened, The Holy Script. And at first I thought this was like a Christian website, and I'm not convinced at this point, because they're talking about, other ways that Ishtar was looked at that were light and love and things like that. So I kind of want to talk a little bit about the misleading facts about that dark trinity.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's the dark trinity being the three demonic spirits. Extremely demonic. When you read Return of the Gods, and that's with a little g. From what I can tell, what is it? Baal is at the top.
Baal.
And then you have Ishtar,
and
Moloch.
Yep, and the way the book and the other references that I found is that is the hierarchy of those three. Yeah,
making the triangle, and each leading into the other, and what's happened is very interesting, and not. It's like so insidious. It's through. I guess, and then the references back into that they showed up in early times, and then Christianity prevailed there for a while with and then the reemergence.
It's really interesting in that chapter in particular where he starts showing the reemergence of Ishtar. And so if you really look at it, it's Ishtar and Moloch. Like Baal is a god of war and chaos. So, I mean, I don't think he ever really went anywhere other than, people started following Christ more. But Ishtar and Moloch, those two had to sit still for a while.
Yeah, except I think she was creating her own havoc, preparing. Because she was also considered to be the wife of Baal.
Yes.
So I thought that was an interesting, also. And then her signs, which leads me kind of into a new agey thing, right? Is the moon as a crescent, the sun, and the star, Venus.
Yep.
Yeah. She's known as the goddess of Venus.
Yep.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting? Because that showed up as one of our planets.
Yes.
Yes. Things to think about.
For sure. Yeah. So Ishtar is Mesopotamian goddess. So she was pre-Abraham, pre-Old Testament. And so basically Ishtar is referenced in the Old Testament as Ashtoreth. Ashtoreth is her name in the Old Testament. And so there's not a lot of information given in terms of how they worshipped her, but it does talk about the abomination of worshiping her and Baal and Moloch. And there's another one called Chemosh, who I haven't done any research on, but there's multiple Mesopotamian deities that are referenced in the Bible. And anyone who is worshiping them were considered an abomination because they are an abomination. And so as the dark trinity is concerned, like Sheri was saying, the Baal is at the top, and he's I don't know, I guess he would be like the father for the Holy Trinity. And then Ishtar was the one who perpetuated prostitution and orgies and lots of sexual misconduct and homosexuality and then abortion. And so back in the biblical days, the way that they killed the babies was to cut the mother open and take the baby and sacrifice it, which is very different from what we see today, but it's the same basic principle. And then Moloch was the one that they sacrificed those babies to. And all of those things were done in order for people to gain prosperity, money, whatever. It was ritualistic. Same thing you see in modern day witchcraft, except, you know, not all witches are out there publicly killing babies, although I have seen that they're coming out and being very verbal about it now. I saw this one
Wow.
girl who says she's a practicing witch and she's had multiple abortions and she performs a ritual every time.
Wow. Wow.
Mhm.
Yeah. No, it's let me see what uh let me see if I can find some of her names, because it's just like she was the goddess of prostitution, and was also a prostitute herself. Seductress, a seducer, a temptress. She captivated, allured, and snatched away. Patron goddess of the tavern or ale house. She was associated with the partaking of alcohol, particularly beer. So
Yes.
think about all the watching of football that is done in the taverns, and it's just these are all the rituals that are being done today, and not knowingly, but
Yeah.
you know. And what happens when one partakes of too much alcohol? One becomes perhaps more promiscuous. So that's right up Ishtar's alley.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So she let's see, she was a goddess of magic and sorcery, and sorcerer. She was a sorceress, specializing in love magic, enchantment, the conjure desire that altered one's affections, and behavior. Sacred sex, temple prostitution, cult prostitution, and the sacred prostitution all were especially connected to Ishtar.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you think about what people consider white magic today, anything that would
Mm.
promote love or encapsulate love would be what someone would consider they're doing white magic. But the Bible's very clear about any sorcery being a sin and being an abomination. Um,
Mm.
and things need to happen organically. So sitting out there doing spells, you're conjuring demons. You're not conjuring anything from nature. You're not conjuring anything from God. You're literally getting help through demonic spirits when you're doing any form of magic, whether it's white, green, black, whatever the other colors are. And this is what Ishtar's practice was. She wanted you to use her spells. She wanted you to use her way of doing things, because then you're worshiping her ultimately
Yeah.
and giving her power
Well,
and
yeah,
strength.
yeah. Go back to what are her symbols?
Mhm.
The sun, the moon,
Yes.
and the stars.
Yes.
So we see that everywhere, and we see that a lot in New Age type things. So putting our little rocks out in the moonlight and getting you know, re-energizing them or whatever. I mean, it's just there's so many things that we didn't know.
Yeah.
People didn't know that they were doing that is actually practices towards Ishtar,
Yep.
and it's crazy. It's interesting too, because and I wasn't sure if I was going to share this or not, but as I was listening to it, I was getting more and more agitated. And part of it is that I view her as the one who comes in and destroys marriages.
Yes.
Okay, she is that woman. Okay, she is, and I'm like, because I went through that in my first marriage, so I was just like, whoa, and realized, this was it all happening within my life. You
Mhm.
know, Ishtar came in.
I doubt there is a person on this planet who has not in some way been influenced. I really do.
Absolutely.
The Amish, I'm sure, because we're born of sin, so the temptation is
Mhm.
always there. Doesn't matter how faithful you are, the temptation is always going to be there until you truly, you know,
Mhm.
succumb to Jesus and repent. And then you know, but the problem there is once you've repented, there's going to be little attacks all the time, right? Um,
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah, and I found myself having to forgive this other woman and repenting,
mhm.
and I'm like, "Okay, well, I actually don't think I have with her before." So, you know,
I
yeah.
actually have friends that are going through a really ugly divorce right now. And adultery was a big part of it. And so, you know, I'm really close with the wife who was cheated on. But I work with her husband, and I've had to do the same thing. I was super judgmental when I first found out about it, like angry, angry, angry. And then I had to realize that sin is sin. And, you know, even though I understand that this is definitely the influence of what we're seeing in today's society being so accepted, I have no right.
Yeah.
I can judge the actions, sure, but I was literally judging their spirit. I was so mad.
Yeah. And I mean, and if you look at it, it's like anybody could potentially succumb to any situation if they put themselves into a situation that could lead them to that. And like you said, the Amish, maybe, they are not as affected because they stay away from
They do.
everything,
But they also get that
which,
1 year when they leave home, right? They get the 1 year to go out and explore the world, and then it's their choice to return or not. How many of them see the world through the sinner's eyes? You know what I mean?
I didn't realize the Amish did that. I knew the Mormons sent their boys out for
That's a mission
a
trip.
year or
That's
so.
different, though. The Amish don't
Mission
go out
trip, yeah.
to minister. They go out to explore the world before they go home and settle down.
Oh, interesting. I did not know that because we don't have Amish in Florida that I know of. So yeah, and that's really interesting.
Mhm.
But it and this kind of about the Amish and whatnot. So really, I guess Ishtar started really rearing her head during World War II, and things started to change then. But it was really prevalent. Think about it in the '60s, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Love, drugs, and rock and roll. Um, you know,
Yep, the hippie
love
movement,
is yeah,
whole new a whole new eye opener, and that's where free love really took its turn, and but,
yeah.
if you think about what's discussed in other chapters of that book, it was in the '50s and early '60s when the government was working really hard to take God out of the government. Then it started working to take God out of schools, and by the '70s, they had accomplished. And so in the '70s, after the free love movement happened, then we start seeing all these STDs and people getting really sick, and it's been this snowball effect of pain and destruction for so many people. But yet
Oh, yeah.
people want to live for pleasure and not for redemption.
It's my right. It's my right.
Yeah.
It's my body, my choice. And it is. And if that's your choice, but we have free will.
Yeah.
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 So, I found it interesting too, and this is maybe perhaps one way that the Amish are not affected, I would assume, is the fact that they're not into tech. So they don't use tech, they don't use
Yes.
TVs, they don't use all of the computers and the phones and all of that. But that's another way, that with Hollywood, surprise, Hollywood comes up,
Mhm.
and Hollywood, I mean, think about it. If you go back and watch old movies, because Lane, my husband, loves to watch old movies, and there's a lot implied. You don't see much
Mhm.
of anything. I don't even know if they kiss much. So it's,
They do, but
you went
they
from
never open
that.
their mouth in old
Yeah.
movies.
So it's just very,
Mhm.
very subtle. And that's the way it was. And then it started evolving, right? it's again that normalization. We've heard that word a lot lately, and it was normalizing all along. Normalizing that, first you didn't show even people who were married in bed.
Yep.
Now what do we see? We see everybody and their mother in bed together, and nudity everywhere. And I mean, and that was like, they said in this book that, if these people came back and saw this, they would be like, what just happened?
Yeah.
It's like,
it's crazy to me that actors now have to write into their contracts, I will not do nudity scenes if they don't want to. Otherwise, if they accept a role, they have to get nude. And it's mind-blowing to me.
It is. And then I was listening to this one, I'm trying to think, I think he's a rapper, and I think he does some shows and whatnot. And they wanted him, apparently one of the things that they do with the men is they make them wear a dress on screen. Okay. And he was like, I'm not doing it. I'm not, no. He was a Christian man, and he's like, I know. But that's one of the things they do. And so what do you think that's showing us?
Yeah.
It's the cross. And Ishtar was part of that cross also, of men dressing as women and women dressing as men. So what is that leading us into?
Yes. And I'm currently doing the Bible, the Bible in a year, the 1 year Bible. Excuse me. Sorry. And I just read yesterday in the book of Deuteronomy for the April 1st or April 2nd reading that where God very specifically says men will not wear women's clothes and women will not wear men's clothes. It is an abomination. And I realize people always want to come and say we're under the new covenant, but Jesus was very clear that he did not come to break the covenants of old. He came to fulfill prophecy. That's what he was here for. He wasn't here to say you don't need to live by those old laws. Yes, he loosened some of the grip because the laws were written for the Jews and not the Gentiles. But if you become a Christian as a Gentile, you are adopted into Abraham's family. Therefore, you need to live as if you're under some of that Jewish law. And those things that are considered abominations apply to us too.
Mm-hmm. It's just, I don't know, the rules that are there are, a lot of them are just like common sense. If you want, if you want to lead a life that's more pure, then you would follow along those rules. I mean, they're not, So it's interesting.
Did you see? I would have to assume that you saw that John Cena, whom I would never watch in a movie, but he apparently had to go on stage naked. Did you see that at the Oscars?
No, I did not.
So he had like this
little. He had to do it naked
at
on
the Oscars. Yeah. So he had like this little piece of cardboard, not cardboard, but like a poster board, and he literally sidestepped his way on stage and went up to the microphone. And apparently this is a form of hazing in Hollywood that has become so grotesque. But I saw a Christian commentator on YouTube that was talking about it, about this is some form of a ritualistic Hollywood initiation type thing. And once you do something like this, you blow up in Hollywood.
You go higher levels. Yep. You get more. And it was the same thing with this guy. And that's why he's like, no, I'm not dressing as a woman. Yeah. I don't care. And he realized, looking back, he's like, oh, this is why all these men have come and dressed as women on stage. And so it's just the normalizing these things to us, making it just, that's the way it is now. And that's what everybody does. And
and here is how the return of the gods is really happening right now, and how we are definitely rolling into end times. There are more and more young Hollywood actors that are in my age bracket and a little older than me, who are coming forward now that all this Nickelodeon stuff is coming out, all the pedophilia stuff is coming out. All these actors are coming forward and talking about, yes, I experienced this. Yes, this is what happens. Yes, it's real. And all of them are being shut down and called conspiracy theorists. They're not being taken seriously. I mean, Hollywood is winning, even though people aren't wanting to go, the common people like us aren't wanting to go support these actors. They are still winning in terms of people not believing what's really going on in that town, or just turning a blind eye.
I think there's an awakening there too, because the people that are awake and listening, had already, before these people even came out, already had inklings of what was going on, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, no, we know that that's what happened. And so I think more and more people are figuring it out, because more and more movies are not being watched. People are not going,
No, Tyler
to the movies as much.
But I
there's a lot of people.
see Hollywood itself. I mean, I keep hearing things like Hollywood's self-imploding, Hollywood's not doing well, but then you go look at shows like the Oscars and they're packed and people are watching them. People are talking about them. You know what I mean? So I know that they're not making the money they were making, but they still have the funding. Where is it coming from?
Oh, well,
that's my point.
The people that want to perpetuate that situation, higher up, are the ones that are funding it. But my understanding is, if you go back and look at that show, in the past so many years, it's gone down and down and down on how many have viewed it. So I think that speaks for it as well. There's a lot of people boycotting things without even saying whether they're boycotting it or not. It's just like, no, I'm not a part of that anymore. I know what this group of people does, and I don't want to be a part of it. And I think it's slowly taking a foothold in that community, whether it be, I think it's going to, honestly, when a lot of stuff really comes out about Hollywood, it's going to rock some people.
Well, and I hope it does.
Because they're like, absolutely, because these are the ones that have been idolized as, oh, they're so great. Or, I mean, look at our music right now. We've watched, not that we watch, but we've seen, commentary on Kanye, or whatever he calls himself now, and Taylor Swift, and the shows that they're putting out there, they're demonic. They're witchcraft. They're, the people are being put under spells. This is all Ishtar.
Well,
showing up.
Look at Puff Daddy, or whatever he calls himself today. He's mixed up in this huge sex trafficking ring right now. That's also got a lot of other big names in there, such as T.D. Jakes. And I don't know if you're familiar with mega church pastors or not, but T.D. Jakes is part of that investigation now, which doesn't surprise me at all. I've always thought he was a false teacher, but he's in there. Prince Harry is in there. Like, there's some big names that are being associated with Puff Daddy.
Yeah.
P. Diddy, whatever his name is.
P. Diddy. Yeah, I mean, it's the same with Epstein, with the people that, all the princes that were Prince Charles, and there's a lot of pictures out there that, I don't think they're faked out. So that can be checked. So yeah, it's coming under exposure. So it's like, I think there's an awareness that's happening, and it's going to take a good bit to, start getting it out of here. But I mean, even like with abortion, because Ishtar leads into abortion, which is for Moloch, right? The sacrifice of babies. I'm seeing, like in Florida, I think I sent you the article, that DeSantis has stopped abortions for 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why 6 weeks. I have no idea. Because the election isn't until whenever, but they're going to put something on our ballot for us to decide. So why are we stopping for 6 weeks until we decide, which isn't 4 months? I don't know. I'm glad. On one side, I'm glad it stopped, but on the other side, I'm just like, I don't understand. But yeah, at least so some of these things are happening, and there are states that are saying no, and so this is just another. The promiscuity led, Ishtar led to the baby that led to the sacrifice to Moloch.
Well, and then on the other side of that, look at what's happening with children's and transgenderism today.
Yep.
That's
another child sacrifice.
Yeah, well, and the whole cross-dressing, the whole men becoming women and women becoming men, but why not start them at puberty? Here's the only thing that's interesting to me about that is they can't reproduce after that, right? So now you're looking at less child sacrifice because these people, when they're older, won't be able to have babies. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's curious.
The planning factor in there is not going to work out well.
Was
little G.
Was that a stupid move on the little G? I don't know. They're losing some of their, but women and look at also, because it's like getting into Moloch, it's like their mothers and fathers are saying, yes, this child needs to be the opposite sex. It's what they want.
They're pushing
so they kids. Are, and they are, and that's part of they are doing the child sacrifice.
True. That's very true. It's baffling to me watching these parents literally brainwash their kids into believing that they're supposed to be the opposite sex, doing everything they can to turn their children into the opposite sex. I don't get it.
Yeah. Oh, I don't get it either. But when I listened to it, because it was kind of like, they were talking about the fact that, mothers would bring their child to be sacrificed. That was part of their ritual.
That's true.
And because they were just like, and be there. I don't know if they were there to watch it as well. Because they felt like they were doing a good thing, And there's, I think, like you were saying, that the witch who keeps having them, and she's sacrificing each one to her god, little G.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
it's all,
and it's like nothing I've ever seen. It's a time that I never in my wildest dreams thought that we would be encountering. Never in my wildest dreams. But when I look back, so I'm born in the 70s. When I look back at what the 80s looked like and how things have evolved just since the 80s, when I was old enough to remember things, and even the television shows that I watched in the 70s, they were so they were starting to become more and more promiscuous, but they were still relatively humble. When you look at what we're going through today in terms of TV, but the evolution of, or the progression rather, of promiscuous television, promiscuous behavior. This is not what we're seeing today. Is not free love. What we're seeing today is endorsed sin. It's just so different than what the 60s was.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think back about that, and then I love watching old television. And I love Downton Abbey is probably one of my favorite TV shows ever produced. So I watch it on repeat quite a bit just when I'm working around the house. But even Downton Abbey, even that show has representation of what homosexuality looked like in the 20s and what premarital sex looked like in the 20s. And, so even though it wasn't nearly what we see it as today, it wasn't accepted back then. it was still a part of it. And so I know you said World War II kind of opened the door, but the reality is, I mean, there's always been those people, but without God, because back then people were, you were either Catholic or Christian in those days. I mean, there weren't a lot of religions and faiths to choose from. Back then, people still lived under God's law more than they didn't. And so the fear was still there of showing that side of yourself. So even if you were experiencing that, you still had fear. And a lot of people would repent and change their ways. But today, you're honored by society if you choose to live in that light instead of living as a heterosexual Christian God-fearing person. We are becoming the persecuted.
It's crazy. It's well, and if you think about too the progression of divorce through that, divorce was not a thing. I mean, the woman was shamed if she got divorced, right? Back in, I don't know, 20s, 30s, it was, I'm not saying they didn't do things they shouldn't do, but that was just, and now it's like, pay your $50, pay whatever, you're done. You're done. It's easy peasy. They make it as easy as possible to get divorced, so you can move on and do whatever.
Well, and people walk into marriages with that in their mind, right? If it doesn't work, I'll just get a divorce. If it doesn't work out, people don't go into marriages with the idea of, this is the rest of my life. I want this to be the person I spend the rest of my life with. They walk into a marriage thinking, we'll give it a shot.
Well, and look at that too, because there's a lot of marriages that aren't happening within the church.
Yes.
I'm going to write my own vows.
Yes.
Okay. And some of those vows are fine. They're within, the church, but some of them are not so much, so it's.
Well, I'm guilty of that.
You've seen.
Literally got married at the registrar's office. We did not have vows. We wrote vows afterward, but well,
I
told him though, I did tell him, I said, if we end up having a service, because we've talked about having a real wedding, and honestly, biblically speaking, if you're married to each other and you take vows in the eyes of God, you're married. I mean, back in early Christian days or early biblical days, people didn't have ceremonies necessarily. They just were married. They just committed themselves to each other. But so technically, Tyler and I have been married since 2017. That's when we first took vows under the eyes of God. But anyway, the point of that being, we've talked about having an actual church service at some point to take traditional vows. And I told him, I said, your family's going to lose their mind when I say in front of everybody and God that I'm going to obey you.
Well, and that's interesting too, because that's all been twisted, right? Because I've listened to different perspectives on the obeying, and really the obeying goes back and forth. It's not, it's not, or submitting. I think it's submitting to.
Yes, but I mean, the traditional,
and people get hung up on that,
is that the wife will obey the husband because that's the way God created marriage, right? But it's not, I will, smack me around and I'll do whatever you tell me to do. It's
right.
Love each other as if the world were revolving around them. But
it's, I would say, more respect than, I think it's what its intention is here, and it goes both ways. The respect back and forth.
Yes.
So, yeah.
But I just love the house. Huh?
No, I was just going to say, so you can see how everything has evolved all along, all the different areas that have been changed by, and slowly, insidious, not so much, sped up really a lot now.
It does feel like the last 10 years have just been a blur of I don't know. I feel like the gas pedal's been pushed from 20 miles per hour to 70 in the last 10 years, and we're just seeing things that are so in our face today that were hidden still 10 years ago.
Mhm.
Just like everything with Hollywood.
Yeah,
You know, the
right.
rituals happening on stages, and it just is, it blows my mind. And
It
that
really does.
actually feels like it really became front and center post-COVID.
Yeah, I think, when people had to stay home, I think that a lot of things, were revealed. Like I said, it's the best thing that happened probably for education.
Yes.
Not for education, but for the parents to understand what was going on with education. Their eyes were more opened, and, you know, they're like, yeah, we don't want to be a part of that.
But then you look
And
at what schools
it's,
are allowing now, you know? It's like either
again,
these people were
normalization.
always already in the schools and they just stayed quiet until their voices were allowed to be heard, and now they're exposing who they really are, or schools have just let their guard down and said, "Oh, we'll just hire anybody. We don't care if they're qualified or not as long as they meet the DEI."
Yeah. And schools right now are having a really hard time. I understand hiring teachers, getting somebody to come and teach, um, which is interesting because their population has also gone down in the school system.
Yeah.
But I was speaking to somebody who was hired by a neighboring county, and he's like, they pulled me out of retirement, and he said, we would like you to teach this, this, and this, and he's like, okay, and they're like, you're hired. Because they don't have people. And fortunately, he's a good person, right? They at least picked somebody that was good. But it's it's scary. Um, Again, going back to you know who created the textbooks. That's another insidious
Yeah.
thing that happened, and with
Well,
McGraw and Epstein, not Epstein. Ghislaine Maxwell's dad was part of that. So that's been going on. He's dead now, but it's been going on for years and years and years. It's the only textbook, and it's in the Christian schools too. So,
yes, it is.
think about
My
that.
husband just finished having to go through a business course with a lot of LGBT stuff in the book that he had to read, and he's at Liberty University. And that book pushed LGBT. It was
Yeah,
shocking. His exit
it's very
from that
shocking.
class, he actually spoke up about that and said, "I was astonished to have to use this book at this school. It totally went against all my values."
Yeah, I'm glad he said something because
Me too.
it's yeah, something needs that we in every different way we need to stand up,
Yes.
and and I think that's we didn't say this. Why are we talking about Ishtar today?
Oh, yeah. Why are we talking about Ishtar today? Let's discuss. So,
Yes, let's do discuss. Well, first, we want you to know who Ishtar is
yeah,
because you all have been celebrating Ishtar for years and years and years and years, and we didn't know. I mean, we celebrated Ishtar too. So, and we repent.
yes. Yes, we do. So the chicken and the bunnies on Easter, where did that come from? Where did that come from? Chickens
Yeah,
and bunnies don't really have much to do with the resurrection of Christ. They have lots to do with reproduction.
yeah,
Lots to do with reproduction. And Easter is actually one of the translations for Ishtar.
yeah.
I can't remember which language it is. Do you?
I don't either, but it's so. I mean, even if you look at it, it is just so close in pronunciation that yeah, I don't recall which one it was, but yeah,
And we share this with you not to say don't celebrate Easter, because as a Christian, that holiday is exactly what it means to us. It is the holiday, holy day for the resurrection of Christ. It is the most holy day that we have in the Christian calendar. But understanding what the word Easter means and why the chicken and the eggs and the rabbits are a part of it, might hopefully alter your view on celebrating with those things, because that is more about the goddess of fertility, the goddess of child sacrifice, the goddess of war, the goddess of prostitution, than it is about the celebration of God. It's all about that and not about the celebration of Christ.
Exactly. And I mean, it's kind of, I had the vision in my head of, and we have all our kids out there hunting Easter, Easter eggs and bunnies and, hiding and rehiding eggs. And it's another insidious thing that happened to us. We had no idea that they stole the most holy of holy days, right? And so I think going back to, and it was hard, I found it not hard, but, people would send me Happy Easter, Happy Easter, Happy Easter all day on Sunday. And I was sending back Happy Resurrection Day, because it's like, I think pretty much I'm not going to say that anymore. So,
yeah. I would just send back
being cognizant of what is the meaning. Yeah. What is the meaning of what we believe that day is, and celebrating that. And I think I was even said it to Leigh Ann, we can celebrate that any day and should.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm curious though.
We don't have to wait.
Yes. I wanted to see where the Easter egg hunt started.
Mm.
How Easter is celebrated and why eggs and bunnies are involved. So this is from National Geographic. Christians celebrated Easter in a variety of ways, including sunrise services favored by Protestants and the Easter Vigil, an ancient liturgy and baptismal rite celebrated by Catholics on the night of Holy Saturday. Members of the Orthodox Church celebrate Easter, but 13 days later than other Christians, since their religion is based on the Julian calendar. Over the years, Easter has merged with pagan spring celebrations. Popular traditions including a visit from the Easter Bunny, a folk symbol of spring who bears eggs that symbolize new life. One theory holds that the tradition originated in Germany, and that's what I was thinking. I think Easter is the Germanic translation for Ishtar. I'll look at it in a minute. But the jury is still out. In any case, Easter egg hunts, egg decorating, and candy consumption are a big part of the modern Easter holiday. So it was during the 1870s and 80s that Easter became so commercialized. We'll figure that one out and put a note for you. I do believe that Ishtar's name
put some links.
Is Easter. So
yeah, we'll put links, and I would say, if you're really curious, and really you should be, go out and get Return of the Gods and listen to it or read it and pay attention to what's going on in the world right now, and you're going to see it's coming to life.
Yeah. And Return of the Gods was written by Jonathan Cahn, who is a Messianic Jew and a huge studier and expert on biblical prophecy. He really pays a lot of attention to it, and he's very well educated on it. So I would definitely suggest that book.
Yeah. It's long. Don't be intimidated. Take it in chunks.
Yeah. Put it on Audible, listen to it. And the guy who narrates it's got a great calm voice, and he's nice to listen to. It's not Jonathan Cahn narrating it. So
yeah, no, it is good. And I've listened and re-listened to pieces of it, and it is very, very good.
Yeah, but you're right. It definitely shows the world as it is today. Well, thanks so much for watching today. We hope we didn't ruin Easter for you, but at least gave you some ideas on better ways to celebrate. And, we kept that to the end because the Ishtar is not just about Easter. Ishtar is everywhere, all day, every day. So just pay attention. Just blink and you will see where it's being celebrated, and try to walk away. Step into the light and out of the darkness. Okay. All right. Well, thanks so much for tuning in. Please remember to like, subscribe, share, And yeah, we'll see you next week. Have a great day.